Welcome to Checkered Flag. We're at a very gloomy Nurburgring for rounds 9 and 10 of the German Touring Car Masters. The circuit, of course, home to the European Grand Prix. Last time out at the Sachsenring, it was a turn of a Brit to really come of age in the DTM.
It was a classic case of the old master being hustled by the young gun at Sachsenring when Peter Dumbreck began his pursuit of Klaus Ludwig, saloon car racing's most experienced and most successful driver ever. Ludwig was forced to give it everything he got as the Scot punched in a series of fastest laps, which kept the German ace's lead to less than a second at the Checkered Flag. And just to prove it wasn't a fluke, Dumbreck did it again in race 2, finishing behind Ludwig and ahead of championship leader Bernd Schneider. But as Mercedes dominated, Opel were on a slide. No less than 4 cars suffered blowouts as the abrasive track tore their front tyres to pieces. And Audi didn't fare much better either. The TT's new rear wing was an improvement, but still not good enough. But it was delight for Dumbreck, twice on the podium and now 6th in the championship, as Bernd Schneider extended his lead over Opel's Manuel Reuter to 27 points, with Ludwig 3rd as the cars head to the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit for rounds 9 and 10. High in the Eifel Mountains, above the Rhine, the home of this year's European Grand Prix is a true driver's challenge. And Peter Dumbreck is ready for it.
I've done one test at Nurburgring, so I get to see a bit of the track, and it was a nice track to drive, quite flowing. There was a very slow chicane at the end of the lap, which means you have to hit the curbs very hard. I think that's quite an important part because you can brake very late into there and take a lot of speed through if you're very aggressive with the car. So I think that's quite an important part. And the first corner also, the curbs are very high, so you can't hit the curbs too high or else the car jumps off the road and into the gravel. So you have to be smooth through there, but at the same time you have to be quite attacking on that track to try and find the final tenths that are going to put your grid position higher.
Rainstorms can appear almost without warning at the Nürburgring, so Mercedes were out early in the qualifying session, taking advantage while the track was still dry. Opel were playing it cool. Darren Turner briefly topped the timesheets, but then Bernd Schneider blitzed even the best by 3/4 of a second. Opel had waited for rubber to be laid to give them more grip. Uwe Altzen obviously needed it. But the black Opel was still on a flyer. Faster than Mercedes in his first section of the next lap, Altzen then had the bad luck of catching Christian Apt's Audi just out of the Coca-Cola curve. Even though badly delayed, his lap time said it all. Pole position, but for how long? As Peter Dumbreck claimed 3rd behind the Opel, Bernd Schneider had the answer. 0.4 of a second quicker, pole position once again. And Altzen Woodrow is catching that Audi. Something that Chris Nissen was still struggling to achieve. He couldn't catch the tail of his car. The Audi's continuing to struggle with a lack of high-speed grip. Qualifying was also a struggle for Manuel Reuter, 9th in the closing stages of the session, but after a quick tyre change he'd move up into 4th with just minutes to go. So an intriguing race in prospect for Sunday with the added potential of rain showers despite the spot of sunshine on the starting grid. And with the rain clouds gathering, most of the teams have elected for wet weather tyres, except Opel drivers Menzel, Bartels and Scheider, and Mercedes man Darren Turner, they'll stay on slicks. So on the front row of the grid, it's Bernd Schneider, Uwe Altzen, Mercedes-Benz versus Opel. Same again on row 2, Peter Dumbreck and Manuel Reuter, Mercedes versus Opel again. Then it's Christian Menzel and Klaus Ludwig, the most experienced man in the field, starting from 6th ahead of Michael Bartels and Eric Hellery, both in the Opel Coupes. Following them, Stefano Modena, ex-Formula 1, Marcel Thiemann, one of the young chargers in his Mercedes Coupe, and they're followed by Marcel Fessler and Joe Winkelhock. As with a wet track in prospect, Will Hoy joins me in the commentary box.
As ever, it's damp or wet at Nürburgring. It's just one of those circuits which always seems to be affected by the weather, and probably 5 times out of 10 it is wet. So now the rolling start, going very slowly towards the last corner of the Coca-Cola curve. 4 of the cars, of course, on dries and the rest on wet, so we'll soon see who's got it right.
We will indeed, because Bernd Schneider and Uwe Altzen bring the Mercedes and the Opel side by side around that final corner, holding the speed down. They've got to hold the rest of the pack in formation, but you'll see as soon as they get onto the straight, they'll start to build that speed very quickly indeed. They need to get the slingshot as the lights turn to green. It's already up past 100 miles an hour. Down to the Castrolette for the first time. Bernd Schneider gets the perfect start. Uwe Altzen dropping back. Manuel Reuter there with the yellow and white car. Altzen in that second place. And down the inside of Manuel Reuter, Peter Dumbreck inserts his Mercedes into third place. And Ludwig makes his move as well. It's wheel to wheel. Altzen, Reuter, Ludwig and Dumbreck all in a pack, but Bernd Schneider heading the field now, down to the Ford curve, dropping down the hill, and Klaus Ludwig down the inside of the Opel of Manuel Reuter. A great move there, and Peter Dumbreck right ahead of him. We ride with Manuel Reuter.
It was amazing that fact all the cars got through the first corner of the Castrolette, because it really is a corner where everybody tends to go off at the start. But there you saw Ludwig making a very good early move when perhaps you least expected as a driver. It's the best time to attack on the first lap, but it's very busy out there.
Well, some great battles going on down in the pack. Joe Winkelhock goes wheel to wheel with fellow Opel driver Christian Menzel, and Menzel ain't going to give way. But wow, what about that all the way around the outside?
A very brave move on the first lap, because of course the drivers really don't know what the conditions are like. They don't know how damp it is, because they haven't of course been on the lap at racing speed.
Still at the field, getting a wheel up onto the curbs. They're losing ground. The second place man, Uwe Altzen, and that is good news for Peter Dumbreck, because Dumbreck in third place is closing in on the Opel. Behind him he has Klaus Ludwig, his rival from the Sachsenring. Then it was Ludwig 2 wins, Peter Dumbreck having to settle for second place both times. This time he's got Schneider and Altzen ahead of him, and Klaus Ludwig right there. And going straight on. Manuel Reuter rejoins the circuit, but that is just how slippy it is.
Again, it's a question of first lap, not really knowing the conditions and outbraking himself. And there's Menzel's done exactly the same thing and gone right off at the Wiedel chicane.
And meanwhile, at the head of the field, Bernd Schneider, pursued by Uwe Altzen across the line. Then it's Dumbreck and Ludwig. Mercedes versus Opel. Then two more Mercedes-Benz. And off for Uwe Altzen. He loses his second place, and that is going off on the straight, but the weather conditions really are getting worse.
It's a very strange place to go off, because that is on the straight, so either he put a wheel on the white line and had a real moment, and that sent him onto the grass, or he was pushed there by another car.
Well, I'm sure Peter Dumbreck innocent of that, but what about this one? A replay there of the demise of Christian Menzel.
Yes, it looks like Jaeger, in fact, touched him at the back, but of course, you've got to remember that Menzel's on slick tyres and Jaeger's on wets, and probably Jaeger didn't know that, and Menzel being on slicks would have braked early, so it was probably one of those unfortunate racing incidents.
Reuter in fifth place, with Joe Winkelhock closing in very rapidly indeed there. Fifth and sixth place battle, and that is Peter Dumbreck. Dumbreck was up into second place, has now lost it, dropped back down to third, and a perfectly judged move. The experience there of Klaus Ludwig, still a fearsome competitor at 50 years of age.
Definitely, this is a circuit with these sort of conditions where experience is going to count for so much. It's where the water lies, what sort of curbs you can touch, what bit of the white line you can touch, and so on. And that is so important, these sort of conditions, which are going to vary so much through this race.
Mercedes 1, 2, 3, but the two Opels behind now really starting to push. Eric Hellery of France, Manuel Reuter of Germany, and then a third Opel Coupe now of Joe Winkelhock in sixth position. Then it's Marcel Fessler in the second of the black Mercedes-Benz. A long gap back to him though. So it's the top six car train. Then come Fessler and Lamy in the two Mercedes-Benz, followed by Thomas Jaeger, then Uwe Altzen, and the Audi of Laurent Aiello. And for the first time, I reckon we could see an Audi in the top 10.
Just goes to prove, of course, what these sort of conditions provide is that it equalises cars' performance, even though the Audi isn't as quick. And Aiello, with his talent, is now hanging on well in the midfield.
Laurent Aiello having a very good race, the ex-British touring car champion. And the yellow Audi there, right up on the tail of the recovering Uwe Altzen. 4 Audis in this race, including James Thompson from Great Britain. He's running down at the back of the pack, yet to see him. Aiello, former British touring car champion with Nissan, now running first time really on the pace with the Audi TT, pursuing Thomas Jaeger and Uwe Altzen in their battle for 9th and 10th places. And Uwe Altzen crawling all over the back. A little bit of left foot braking there from Thomas Jaeger in the Mercedes, trying to steady the car. Mercedes versus Opel down the bottom of the pack. Meanwhile, Bernd Schneider still extending his advantage at the head of the field, but some great battling going on here.
Fantastic driving, real entertainment for the spectators. real side-by-side stuff. And there we see Jaeger actually getting inside Alton again. Is he just going to? Yes, he just squeezes past on the inside of the RTL curve. Great drive. You see there from the windscreen just how dirty it is and how difficult it is to see through the screen and to see where the track's going, particularly if you're following a car closely. And here we see Alton coming up the inside yet again, so that's the third time we've had a change between these two in about 500 metres.
And I reckon it's not going to stop there because they're dropping back down towards the Vidal S. Another good overtaking manoeuvre here, dropping back down the hill. Opel has the advantage at the moment, but Thomas Jaeger is determined not to give up, and Jaeger goes alongside again. Superbly judged. Absolutely equally matched cars, and now coming up to the chicane at the top of the hill. Oh, there's a big twitch and a slide there from Pedro Lamy in his Mercedes-Benz, and Manuel Reuter still having to work very hard indeed in fifth place to hold back the grimly determined Joe Winkelhock. Now, Uwe Eltsen pursues Jaeger up through the Vidal S, now through the Coca-Cola curve. You can see the car sliding around on the white lines there that make up the starting grid. And now the Mercedes seems to have the advantage, but don't forget, another overtaking point at the bottom of the hill.
The Castrol S curve is definitely a place to overtake, but I think Alton didn't get as good traction out of the last corner as Jaeger did. And here we see an Opel going off. It looks like Reuter again. Yeah, he's done that line before. He knows this line very well. And I don't suppose he's lost a place either.
Well, he even went through the same hole in the bollards. I am impressed. Meanwhile, the battle, 9th, 10th, 11th places continues. Jaeger versus Eltsen. Aiello with a grandstand seat. And we're riding with Uwe Eltsen, feeding the car down through the S's. Now you can hear the V8 engine start to sing again, right away up to its 9,000 RPM limit. 450 horsepower being unleashed through those treaded wet weather tyres. And the men running at the back on the slick tyres now in all sorts of trouble because the rain is not relenting. If anything, it's starting to get worse. The track is very greasy indeed.
Actually, Steve, I thought the track was getting a bit dry myself because you can see the cars are actually beginning to sort of twitch a bit more. Fun enough, when the track is wet, it's actually you get more grip from rain tyres than when it's sort of getting to these sort of medium damp conditions, and that's when the wet tyres don't work very well.
Well, the men on the dry weather tyres at the moment, Michael Bartel's 13th, Timo Scheider 17th, and behind them, Menzel and Darren Turner. But the battle for 9th, 10th and 11th places does continue. Thomas Jaeger, Uwe Eltsen and Laurent Aiello of France dropping back a little bit now in the Audi, and as you said earlier, as the track dries out there, the Audi seems to lose its ability to stay with these front-running cars. Manuel Reuter there still in 5th place, Joe Winkelhock in 6th place, and the gap between Winkelhock and Marcel Fessler now in 7th place is getting smaller, but this is race leader, and is it just me, or is that spray getting thicker?
No, I think what's happened there is that Schneider's playing very cool here. He realises the track's actually getting a bit dry and he's moving over to the right-hand side of the track where it's damper to look after his tyres. Mind you, of course, with that sort of lead, he's got that opportunity to do that. But if you've got 2-3 cars up your bumper, you can't really sort of start wandering across the track too much.
Oh, talk about being right up somebody's bumper. How about this? Uwe Eltsen closes in again on Thomas Jaeger. I reckon this battle's set to run and run. Oh, and great bit of keeping the door closed by Thomas Jaeger there. I thought he'd left the gap.
Yeah, I think actually they're tied together by a bungee cord because every time somebody gets past one, the other one comes back a lap later. They really are tied together, these two, and they are providing some great racing.
Now again, Thomas Jaeger tantalisingly leaves a gap there, but manages to close the door. How much is he thinking about how much space he can leave?
Well, actually, Steve, I think he's just left it by the looks of things. He's got back down the inside, and very cleverly there, look, he pushes Jaeger onto the curb, which of course is still damp and very, very slippery, being a painted surface.
Oh, and that's not the only battle that's going on as well. Look back behind Manuel Reuter. Joe Winkelhock now has Marcel Fessler crawling all over the back of the red Opel, and Pedro Lamy is closing in as well. 6th, 7th, 8th places. Winkelhock having to defend. Marcel Fessler, without doubt, one of the finds of this year's German Touring Car Masters. 24-year-old from Switzerland. Mooted to be getting a test drive with the Sauber Formula 1 team at the end of the season. How about this? Just about pushing the car up, and, well, actually pushing it off. And that is Eric Hellery battling with Peter Dumbreck for 3rd place, and Dumbreck may have lost it.
He made a great recovery coming out of the Vidal chicane, and then he's moved across into the last curve, the Coca-Cola curve, to defend his line. That was great driving, and obviously he spent a lot of time looking in his mirrors as well.
Well, I wouldn't say by the skin of his teeth, that was more by the skin of his teeth, because it's going to be another attack now on the run down to the Castrol S, the right and the left. And Dubreck again managed to place the car in the defensive position. But Eric Ellery, another very experienced driver, as we have a look at Uwe Alsen making his move, because Alsen really laying it on Thomas Jaeger.
He definitely left too much of a gap when Alsen came down the inside. You can see now Alsen being quite a thinking driver. He knows that he's going to squeeze Jaeger, and he just gives him enough room, not to put him on the grass, but to put him on those curbs where he just cannot get the traction off the corner.
And look at this for third place. Peter Dambreck, Eric Ellery right behind. Whoa, almost on the rear airfoil of the Mercedes. They're really monstering him through the VDOLS. And has Peter Dambreck left the door open this time? Into the right-hander, the Coca-Cola curve. There is an Astra's width, but Peter Dambreck is trying to stay on the outside. Can he keep the power on? Well, that is great defensive driving by Peter Dambreck. Superb car control.
Incredible, really, because he really shouldn't have come out ahead of Ellery because he was on the outside of the last corner.
Now down to the Castrol S. Oh, and it's another challenge by Eric Ellery. Now there's definitely no room to go two abreast here. And round Ellery goes. Back onto the track for Peter Dambreck. He's kept going. Eric Ellery's lost one place, two places. And he's going to have to fight now to stay ahead of Joe Winkelhock onto the straight. Peter Dambreck now has Manuel Reuter right behind him. Fourth place man Reuter. Then it's Fessler. Then Eric Ellery now down in sixth. And he is having to block all the way, because Joe Winkelhock wants to get through as well. Well, a dramatic moment there, but what on earth was going on in Eric Ellery's mind, and Peter Dambreck's heading into that chicane.
Mind you, here we see it again. Ellery obviously has got the quicker car. He felt he was getting frustrated sitting behind Dambreck, and he makes a move probably a bit too late, didn't have enough track position, and they made contact, and Ellery being on the inside was the guy who got spun out. Dambreck had the option to go across the dirt, which he did, straighten the car up, and therefore didn't spin. And of course, he's been there before.
Well, Peter Dambreck doing a great job to get the car back on track in third place. Overall order still Bernd Schneider from Klaus Ludwig, Peter Dambreck third, and there under pressure now Manuel Reuter with Marcel Fessler closing in. It's a Mercedes 1, 2, 3. The question is, will it be a 1, 2, 3 and 4? Join us to find out after the break. Welcome back to the German Touring Car Masters, round 9 of Germany's Premier Championship at the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit. And this is the battle for fourth place, and Marcel Fessler, the young Swiss, going down the inside of the Opel veteran Manuel Reuter. And Reuter, who is currently still second in the championship, can't afford to tangle with the young gun, but he desperately needs every championship point. Peter Dambreck, having survived his attack from Eric Ellery, still there in that third place. Ellery recovering now behind Manuel Reuter. But meanwhile, the rain continues to fall. Darren Turner was on slick tyres. He's given up that battle. And that is Joe Winkelhock sliding off. Obviously, the conditions are getting worse.
For the slick drivers, they've definitely got to come in for wet now. For sure, it is raining quite hard. And even for the wet runners, the wet-tired runners, their tyres will be quite worn now after the race has gone roughly half distance.
Well, Timo Scheider slicks in behind Darren Turner, but look in the background. That is Chris Nissen heading into the pits. Retirement after 11 laps of this 22-lap race. But this is the race leader. Bernd Schneider really is in a class of his own. Just look at the empty track behind him. Nearly 15 seconds now ahead of the rest of the opposition, and that includes Klaus Ludwig and Peter Dambreck, second and third places. Here they are, just on their way down to the Castrol S. Closing in now on Peter Dambreck, Marcel Fessler, the young Swiss driver. Then it's Manuel Reuter, and now behind Manuel Reuter, Pedro Lamy, Portuguese ex-Formula 1 driver, and Pedro Lamy is catching that Astra very quick.
Yes, you don't expect a driver coming from Portugal, nice and hot and a lot of rain, to have sort of great talents in the wet, but he has. He's clearly going very well. And there we see Alsen seems to have gone off yet again.
Well, that's lost him the advantage again in that battle for 9th place with Thomas Jaeger. Meanwhile, Manuel Reuter now starting to get squeezed. by Pedro Lamy in the Mercedes-Benz. And heading down into the pit lane, Michael Bartels, one of the last men out on the track, still on slick tyres. Well, he has given up the unequal struggle there. He's in for wets. Reuter, though, versus Lamy. Opel versus Mercedes. And I'm just wondering whether these wet conditions are making life more difficult for the Opel drivers.
They certainly seem to be, Steve, because there we see Elson in his spin a bit earlier. What happened there, of course, he got up on the inside of the curb of the Castrol S, and it just unsettled the car, and he got on the power and lost it. And so there we see Mansell coming in for his wet tyres. I'm surprised they stayed out so long on slicks. But you're right, I think clearly the Opels are struggling in these conditions much more than the Mercedes.
And there we see the battle between the two Mercedes for third and fourth places. Marcel Fessler and Peter Dumbreck jointly, no doubt, giving the team management an absolute heart attack. Riding now with Peter Dumbreck. Meanwhile, James Thompson, the last man to come into the pits to change off slick tyres onto wets. He's back out in the Audi. But Dumbreck and Fessler doing battle third and fourth places.
You almost feel it's inevitable that Fessler's going to get past Dumbreck. He looks a lot more controlled than Dumbreck does. Perhaps Dumbreck pushed a bit too hard earlier in the race on his wet tyres, and a little bit more worn now.
Oh, there you see it, a big twitch there from Peter Dumbreck, trying to balance the car. It may well be his tyres are more worn than Marcel Fessler. There you can see the difference in lap time, and Fessler's car potentially, without doubt, the quickest of the Mercedes at the moment on the track. And Marcel Fessler, these two young guns, Dumbreck and Fessler, really would like to keep their name in the frame for Mercedes-Benz for whatever comes in the future, whether it's single-seaters or the continuation of drives in the German Touring Car Masters. These two men poised to come up. 12 laps now completed of the 22-lap race. Oh, and again, well, that is not going to endear Dumbreck to the team management. Straight lines the chicane for the second time, and that really is now becoming an unequal struggle to stay ahead of the black car, which is right behind.
It just proves the sort of pressure that Dumbreck's under. He's really having to push hard. One more mistake like that, and I'm sure Fessler will be through.
Well, if he does come through, watch out behind him in the spray there, because just switching the lights on as he hits the heaviest of that spray, Manuel Reuter in the Opel, and this could be bad news for Mercedes-Benz, because if Fessler gets held up behind Dumbreck, that is going to allow Reuter to get into a position to attack. Pedro Lamy is going to be right behind Reuter, though, and keeping him well and truly busy in his rearview mirror. And Marcel Fessler again knows the pressure is on him as well. No team orders here. Dumbreck and Fessler are fighting for that third place, which could make a huge difference in championship points at the end of the season. Peter Dumbreck is not going to give up a podium position here at the Nurburgring, not without a battle. But look at Fessler's car, the grip it's got there on the wet surface. Dumbreck slides wide, leaves a little bit of room, can't close the door completely, and neatly through goes Marcel Fessler. Now Dumbreck's going to have to watch not only the black car in front, but the white Opel coming in behind.
Actually, Steve, I think what's happened is these two guys, Fessler and Dumbreck, have held each other up and allowing Reuter and Lamy to close in on them. So we may now see Fessler stretching away, but of course Dumbreck's struggling a bit with his car, so we'll have to see whether he can hold off the two cars behind him.
And the man here that looks like he could benefit from a lot of this is Pedro Lamy at the back. A much cleaner and tighter line there than the Opel of Manuel Reuter ahead. And maybe Reuter is another one who's been sliding around. You see there, the car just doesn't turn into the corner. And Pedro Lamy says, thank you very much, and dives through.
It may also be that the Mercedes are much better on the brakes, because they do seem to be able to get the car slowed down and turned in, whereas the Opels, when they seem to get on the brakes and turn, don't seem to get into the apex as well.
Now, Manuel Reuter closing in now on Peter Dumbreck. Dumbreck's been dropped from third to fourth place. And this is Laurent Yellow, and Audi can celebrate not only being in the top 10, it's 9th place now for the former British Touring Car Champion. And 3 out of the 4 Audis are still running. Now you can see that big rear wing there, and well, you can see the Audi needs it, still sliding around there. But the new rear wing homologated for the German Touring Car Masters, but the car's still lacking that aerodynamic downforce. It's not as precise to drive as these cars at the head of the field, but the Audi is coming good. Meanwhile, Manuel Reuter back on the tail again of Pedro Lamy, but the Portuguese is determined not to let the Opel through. And more important, Pedro Lamy is closing in every lap on Peter Dumbreck. Dumbreck has actually got a bit of airspace this time around because Lamy was so keen on defending. But there are 7 laps left to go. You can see the conditions. They change from part to part of the circuit. Being on a mountain, there's bits of the track where it's raining, bits of the track where it's not. And Peter Dumbreck slides a little wide again there, and that's going to allow Pedro Lamy to close in down the straight. Meanwhile, ahead of them, Marcel Fessler still there in that 3rd position, pulling away.
And here we see Lamy diving down the inside of Reuter in the Dunlop curve. Again, demonstrating Mercedes' ability to brake and turn into a tighter corner than the Opel in these conditions.
So now it's going to be Mercedes versus Mercedes. Manuel Reuter dropping back from this battle for 4th and 5th places, and I really do think you can see there Peter Dumbreck just has not got the traction out of the corners, whether he punished his tyres a little bit too hard early in the race. Whatever, the Portuguese driver's strategy has been absolutely spot on.
It may, of course, be that Dumbreck's car has been set up with more dry conditions in mind. Maybe he thought it was going to dry out, because clearly he's having difficulty getting the power down, and the car is twitching just about on every corner as he puts the gas down. And here we see Lamy's actually made a move, again, down the inside, lots of grip, lots of traction, and away he goes.
Well, Dumbreck almost unable to defend that. The question is now, can he keep Manuel Reuter behind him as well? 5th and 6th places up for grabs. Long gone now in 4th position. Pedro Lamy extending his advantage, closing in now on Marcel Fessler. But Dumbreck's still there, and there is Manuel Reuter right on the tail of Dumbreck's car. Now, if you were Manuel Reuter, what would you be planning?
I think I'd probably hit him up the back, go into the Vidal chicane, get him unsettled and get past him into the last corner, the Coca-Cola curve.
Well, let's see what happens. Well, Dumbreck's made it possible without that, maybe. Slides across the gravel there at the Castrol S. And Manuel Reuter, oh, and you can see Dumbreck in all sorts of trouble.
Unfortunately, poor Peter Dumbreck did it himself. Reuter didn't really have to make a move at all. And, of course, Dumbreck's been there 2 or 3 times this race, and he's mastered the challenge of getting across the gravel and back on the track and getting the power down, although he nearly overdid it then.
Well, it's still looking pretty secure for 6th place for Peter Dumbreck. This is 7th and 8th place battle. Thomas Jaeger and Eric Hillery. Hillery, of course, was battling with Dumbreck in those early stages. He, too, has had a few moments drop down the order. But let's take another look at this with Peter Dumbreck.
Yeah, here we see Dumbreck turning into the Castrol S curve, the first corner. And really, it does demonstrate that his car hasn't got a lot of grip, because he turned in but just had no lateral grip at all and just lost track position. And there he was going off onto the gravel and then running wide when he comes out and gets onto the ever so icy slippery curve and has another moment. And there we see Alton, I think, going off yet again, and he's been there a few times before, and his car really has been rally crossing in this first race.
And the rain continues to pummel down at the Nurburgring, but this man is smiling every inch of the way. Bernd Schneider has come, seen and conquered onto the 22nd and final lap of round 9 of the German Touring Car Masters. Nearly 30 seconds ahead of any of his opposition. He is known as the Rainmaster, and he is now, without doubt, one of the Ringmasters too, because the Nürburgring has delivered its customary wet and dry challenge, and Bernd Schneider has been more than its equal.
He really has dealt with these conditions brilliantly. He's just driven the car very smoothly, but he's been very committed at the same time. Just got to look at the car, and he's using every bit of track, so he's not holding back. So the guy really is in control, and he's just made it look very, very easy.
Well, Norbert Haug, the motorsports boss of Mercedes-Benz, looking very happy indeed on the pit wall as Bernd Schneider brings the car down through the final sequence of corners of this 9th round of the German Touring Car Masters, still keeping up a tremendous pace, but now he's almost got the checkered flag in sight. Final time through the Vidal S, just one corner to go, the final hairpin, the Coca-Cola curve, and he now has the pit lane in sight. Turns in that lovely crisp note of the V8 again, just a little twitch and a slide as Bernd Schneider celebrates victory, and that is by a huge margin. Look back from the silver and yellow car and just count how long before Klaus Ludwig's second place appears through the mist. It's over 25 seconds before Ludwig even gets to the final corner. That is the advantage, and the sign of the strategy too. The car one lap down there. Christian Menzel, one of the drivers who gambled on using slick tyres, that gamble didn't pay off. but a fine second place for Klaus Ludwig, 26.7 seconds behind race winner Bernd Schneider. And heading for third place, young Marcel Fessler crosses the line ahead of Pedro Lamy, then Manuel Reuter in the Opel Astra, followed home in sixth place by Peter Dumbreck. So a tremendous race. Dumbreck no doubt relieved to see the checkered flag. And the 53,000 strong crowd have the mouth-watering prospect of yet another race to come. But Bernd Schneider crowned the winner of round 9 at the Nurburgring ahead of Klaus Ludwig, Marcel Fessler, Pedro Lamy, Manuel Reuter and Peter Dumbreck. And the track claiming its victims right up to the very last lap. A lot of work to do for Stefano Modina's mechanics before his car can be back out on track in just 20 minutes for the next race. Bernd Schneider, though, extending his championship lead now to 37 points over Klaus Ludwig, who's now 2 points ahead of Manuel Reuter. And Peter Dumbreck is 6th in the points and 6th on the track as the cars line up for round 10. But what a prospect. Schneider and Ludwig on the front row of the grid for Mercedes-Benz, the two most experienced drivers in the championship, followed by the young novice Marcel Fessler and the experienced Portuguese driver Pedro Lamy, also for Mercedes. Then comes Manuel Reuter, the first of the Opels, alongside Peter Dumbreck in that 6th place, row 3 of the grid, ahead of the charger Thomas Jaeger and Eric Hellery, no doubt intent on revenge on Dumbreck from 1 row behind. And there'll be fireworks on row 5 of the grid too. Two real crowd pleasers, Joe Winkelhock and Uwe Altzen in their Opel Coupes. And then behind them, the best they've ever lined up for a race this season, the two Audis of Lauriello and James Thompson, 11th and 12th. And Stefano Modena at the back of the field makes it a full grid of 20 cars heading into the rolling start.
And being held back very much so by Schneider. It's a snail's pace around there, but just wait till he gets the car in a straight line and he can absolutely floor it. He wants to dominate the start. He wants to be the first guy into the first Castrol corner.
Now, team orders, forget that. This is all about horsepower and handling it down into the Castrol S, and more to the point, coming out the other side. But at the head of the field, Bernd Schneider makes a copybook start yet again. Manuel Reuter hustling there in the Opel, trying to find a way past this mass of Mercedes. Oh, and someone's going a little bit wide there, bumps over the curbs. And someone's done a complete 360 in the pack. That looks like Eric Hellery spins out of his 7th place. Peter Dumbreck survives. Manuel Reuter loses a bit of ground there, and Dumbreck takes advantage.
Yeah, it was almost guaranteed there was going to be an incident of that first corner of the Castrol S. It always happens, and there were 6 lanes of traffic going into one. So it was poor old Hellery, though, who got squeezed and just lost it as he got back on the par. And here we see it, Hellery on the inside being squeezed by Dumbreck, I think, and there he just loses it, does a nice 360, and it's amazing that he was missed by absolutely everybody.
And the action continues there. Marcel Thieme, oh, and a big biff there on the side of Uwe Altzen's car. Altzen dropping back there behind Michael Bartels as well. And Manuel Reuter now with Peter Dumbreck going wheel to wheel with him. And it's Opel versus Mercedes. Which set of headlights is going to come out of the Merc first? Well, it's Dumbreck on the inside line, but Manuel Reuter, that is tremendous driving on the wet stuff off the racing line. And straight away, taking advantage there, Thomas Jaeger demotes Peter Dumbreck another place. Bernd Schneider then, race leader, Klaus Ludwig, then Marcel Fessler, the two black cars, Pedro Lamy, then Manuel Reuter, and then the big battle still going on between Thomas Jaeger, Peter Dumbreck, and now Marcel Thieme catching them as well.
And here's Thieme making a move down the inside of Dumbreck. Yeah, very good, clean move there into the Vidal chicane. Gets through cleanly, and Dumbreck's now lost 2 places in the last half a lap, and more importantly, he's lost a place to his teammate.
Peter Dumbreck now down into 8th place, right behind him there. Michael Bartels in 9th. Uwe Altzen recovering as well in 10th place. And Christian Menzel makes it a 3rd Opel now on the tail of that Mercedes. And at the head of the field, it's Bernd Schneider from Klaus Ludwig, then Marcel Fessler with Pedro Lamy very, very late on the brakes down into the Castrol S. Then comes Manuel Reuter. And, well, it is like the local motorway on a Friday night. And as usual, 1 or 2 people taking the alternative route, and that looks like Peter Dumbreck. Oh, Dumbreck spun right in the middle of the pack, and Eric Hellery is spun out as well. Joe Winkelhock's been off onto the dirt, he's recovering. And Peter Dumbreck lines it all up, gets it pointed in the right direction, but causing carnage in the pack.
Amazing again, though, that nobody hit each other, but it really was a bit like formation dancing. And here's Christian Abt in the Audi taking a bit of a cross-country route at the RTL curve. And here we see the replay again with Dumbreck really just losing at the beginning of that sequence of bends, then trying to get back on the track, but being squeezed a bit more or getting on the power a bit too quickly by the looks of things. And in the background, Eric Hellery, his dancing partner, doing exactly the same thing and getting on the power again too early. And poor old Joe Winkelhock having to take avoiding action across the gravel and also one of the Audis. And here we see Dumbreck on the inside, but you see the car gets unweighted there as it comes off over the curb, and that just was enough to unsettle the grip.
Now that has actually answered always one of my questions. Why is it they can always drive across the grass and then when they get back onto the tarmac they spin? So Peter Dumbreck there, a complete double axle, but he is still going, albeit now down the field. Meanwhile, Bernd Schneider, Klaus Ludwig, then Marcel Fessler ahead of Pedro Lamy, then Manuel Reuter in fifth. Thomas Jaeger in the second of the silver Mercedes-Benz in sixth position ahead of Marcel Thiemann, Uwe Alsen, Stefano Modena and Christian Menzel, who completes the top 10. We ride into the Coca-Cola curve with Uwe Alsen, but already onto the straight. Schneider, Ludwig, Fessler and Lamy. 1, 2, 3, 4 Mercedes-Benz. This is half distance. Join us for the rest after the break. Nurburgring round 10 of the German Touring Car Masters, and it is all action up and down the field. Uwe Alsen closing in on Marcel Thiemann. Peter Dumbreck has spun himself down to the back of the pack. Bernd Schneider, Klaus Ludwig, Marcel Fessler and Pedro Lamy. 1, 2, 3, 4 for Mercedes. Then the battling Opels. Reuter, Jaeger, Thiemann, Alsen and Modena. And off the track, Christian Abt sliding off for the second time, struggling with the handling of the Audi TT Coupe. And that is Stefano Modena again, taking the long cut around the outside of the RTL curve, rejoins the track at the bottom of the hill.
It looks like he's been ploughing with the amount of mud he's brought back onto the track. It is interesting to note how some drivers feel comfortable with these wet conditions and other drivers just hate them. It's really a question of finesse. Some drivers have a very gentle touch with the car and others are very aggressive, but you can be aggressive in dry conditions in the wet. And here we see Modena going off quite quickly, losing loads of bodywork, including his rear bumper, and doing quite a good job of keeping the car going.
It's quite steeply downhill there, much steeper than it looks on our cameras, but this is the battle that he's just departed from. Uwe Alsen, Christian Menzel, Timo Scheider and Darren Turner at the back here, 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th places. Oh, and that's Darren Turner off! And he too is practicing the art of driving in the kitty litter. Gets the car back on the track. Lip of throttle there, driving all the way around the outside of the gravel trap. He's going to lose 4, 5 places as a result of that. And that is disappointment for Darren Turner. Not happy with the car in these conditions. And I suspect that is also partially down to the car rather than the driver. And how about this for hanging the tail out? Thomas Jaeger and Marcel Thiemann, 6th and 7th places. Uwe Alsen's right behind them in 8th place in the Opel Astra. But these two are having an absolute dogfight.
It's a question of really anything you can do, I can do. They both hang out their tails there. Superb demonstration of driving. Here they're coming up to the Vidal chicane, and Thiemann diving down the inside, getting past Jaeger. No, and he gets a bit of a twitch on there, and Jaeger gets back up on the inside. Very, very close as they approach the last corner of the Coca-Cola curve, and Thiemann pushes Jaeger back up on the curve. Looks ever so tight. Mercedes have obviously built some stronger bodywork in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, that's not the only battle going on. Look ahead of them, coming down into the Castrol S. Marcel Fessler has Pedro Lamy crawling all over his back bumper. Then it's Manuel Reuter. Then this battle, 6th and 7th places. Thiemann now ahead of Thomas Jaeger. And then this battle, 8th, 9th and 10th places. Alsen, Menzel, Timo Scheider, all in effectively equal Opel Coupes. Tremendous racing all the way up and down the field. But meanwhile, Bernd Schneider, the race leader, has just about disappeared and left everybody in his dust. Well, spray at very least. Meanwhile, Uwe Alsen now getting the attentions of Christian Menzel. And Timo Scheider coming under tremendous pressure by Michael Bartos, who's going all the way around the outside of him and on the wet racing line. That really is tremendous driving by the former Formula 3000 driver.
A very brave move by Bartels into the Dunlop curve. But it's not all over yet, because here's Alton and Menzel, with Alton just getting through before the RTL curve. And so the Opals really having a good scrap between themselves in the midfield.
Tremendous racing all the way, up and down the numbers. Bernd Schneider, though, extending his advantage over Klaus Ludwig at the head of the field. The two veterans pulling well away. And this is a great, great move. Eric Hellery absolutely storming. Don't forget, he spun early in this race. He's been working his way up from the very back, but he's gone too far, too deep. And he's in the kitty litter again at the Castrol S.
A real shame for Hellery there, because he made the move and then lost it by just going in too deep on the brakes. Just look at all that bodywork. This literally could almost build a new car.
Oh, and that's Thomas Jaeger off at the pit curve, and he has slid down the bank into the tyre wall, and Thomas Jaeger, I don't think, is going to get that car back out. He seems to have stalled the engine, trying to restart the engine, but Jaeger has definitely lost that 6th place. Meanwhile, the battle's still on. Eric Hellery stonking through the field, up past Timo Scheider, and Uwe Alton's gone off, so that's 9th place now for Eric Hellery. Timo Scheider up into 10th place. Uwe Alton slips back down to 11th position, and the battle of the Opals continues, and they're scattering the gravel onto the track. The recovering Uwe Alton.
Yeah, and there we see Jaeger going off in the background on his gravelly trip. Clearly not as much grip in the gravel as the Opel of Stefano Modena. And I think at the last moment he realises he isn't going to make it back on the track, and then embarrassingly just slides slowly into the barrier.
Well, the good news for Thomas Jaeger is they have now managed to extricate the car. They've got the engine started, and he is going to rejoin the race. There he is, in fact, on the racetrack, a lap down now and in 17th place. And again, cascading gravel there from underneath the side pods. Meanwhile, Bernd Schneider, race leader, absolute domination of both the races here at the Nurburgring. Klaus Ludwig, 2nd place. Then the battle's still on for 3rd. Marcel Fessler of Switzerland, Pedro Lamy of Portugal. Then the best of the Opals in 5th place, Manuel Reuter. Marcel Thiemann in 6th place. And how about this? 7th place now for the Audi of Christian Abt. That is the best that the car has run thus far this season. Meanwhile, Uwe Alton is having the sort of day that must be making him wonder why he got out of bed this morning.
Probably, Steve, because he's paid so much, but he's certainly keeping us well entertained today. He's probably had more offs than anybody, and there's Michael Bartels doing exactly the same thing that Jaeger and Modena did earlier, but this time rejoining the track.
Well, the number 8 car finding its way down what's becoming a muddy route now. It's almost got its own little set of wheel tracks there, but oh, a little bit of a scare there for Darren Turner. Suddenly finds an almost stationary Opel right in front of him. But Darren Turner takes very quick avoiding action, and Uwe Alton's heading for the kitty litter again.
Same old line, he's been there before. You thought he might learn from his previous mistakes, but he's, as I said before, he's certainly keep us entertained. There's almost another track developing. You've got the Rallycross Nurburgring track and the racetrack.
And behind Joe Winkelhock here, Stefano Modena, another driver making a recovery. Behind them, James Thompson there in his Audi. And Thompson gaining some experience again with the German Touring Car Masters, just his 2nd race meeting with the Audi TT. Oh, and round Modena goes. Oh, that leaves James Thompson a little bit of work to do. But Modena keeps the engine running. He's going to rejoin, once again, shuffled back down to the tail of the pack.
He just seemed to get on the power a bit too early. He was lucky to be missed by both the Audis, and just gets on his way again. Don't think he's happy with these conditions at all, nor the setup on his car.
And that car ahead of him now is Peter Dumbreck in the Mercedes. Dumbreck trying to work his way back up through the field as well, avoid all these spinners. Meanwhile, the battle of the Opals continues. Christian Menzel and Eric Hellery doing battle now for 8th position behind Christian Abt's Audi TT. And they are really, really now starting to have their own personal little feud here. Behind them at the top of our screen, Darren Turner in the Mercedes. But it's wheel to wheel down into the Castrol S.
And a good move there by Henry, because it's we've seen a lot of mistakes there, people out-braking themselves and going straight on, but he managed to hold on to it. And a very rude punt up the back there by Menzel, probably because Henry was a bit slower out of the Castrol curve, allowing Menzel therefore to get along inside before the next corner of the Ford curve.
Down into the left, now the right-hander, and the track conditions starting to dry out, but it's still very slippery and very greasy on that surface. And once again, Uwe also with that battered and bruised. You can see half the nose spoiler is gone. There's bits of rear spoiler hanging off. Uwe Alton now is just refusing to give up.
Yeah, you see a bodywork damage there. It's rubbing on the tyre. Very worrying for a driver because you don't know whether the tyre's going to hang on or whether it might explode and put you off.
Well, great battle going on for it. 10th and 11th places, Timo Scheider and Michael Bartels. Scheider just outbrakes himself, but he's come back on the track ahead. Now, is he going to leave the gap open? Yes, that is deliberate driving, I think, because otherwise he'd have been penalised for taking a shortcut. But Michael Bartels muscles his way alongside now, gains that 10th place, but Timo Scheider really having there to use a little bit of brain work as well to avoid being penalised. Meanwhile, behind him, the smoking Uwe Alten comes across the line in 12th position. And as Peter Dambrecht starts to close in on Uwe Alten, it is going to be a case now of trying to get that black opal to hang on for the checkered flag. Meanwhile, 10th, 11th and 12th places, the three Opel Astras almost appear to be glued together, but at the moment it's Michael Bartels with the advantage.
And there we see Borod Altsam not hanging on, going off yet again. It may be, of course, that the damage to the right front tyre means that he can't turn into left-hand corners as well, and it might just have caught him out. And the other thing to remember in these conditions is that, as I said earlier, when it's very wet, the wet tyres work really well. You can turn into the corners much better than you can in these, as you can see there, with Scheider running wide at the forward curve. Locked up and just went wide. These conditions really are very, very greasy, and wet tyres just don't work very well.
Well, not too long to hang on, though, for the race leader. Bernd Schneider on to the last lap of the 22. And just look again at the margin of his superiority over the pursuing pack. Klaus Ludwig, Marcel Fessler, Pedro Lamy, Manuel Reuter and Marcel Thiemann aren't even within sight. He is almost on his victory lap, waving at the marshals while he is still at racing pace. He's dropped his pace this time around, balancing the car down through the bottom of the hill. This man has not put a wheel wrong all weekend.
He's looked absolutely tremendous, and the car looks like it's in showroom condition. It's hardly a speck of mud on it. It looks clean. Just look at that commitment through that corner. I mean, he's on his last lap and about to win his second race, yet he's still showing wonderful car control.
Well, no doubt, pride there for the boss of AMG Mercedes, Hans-Werner Albrecht, the architect of these cars, the architect of this man's superiority again at the Nurburgring. The AMG team have dominated this race. Bernd Schneider, in wet or dry, has been the fastest man on the Nurburgring. And is this going to set Bernd Schneider up after 10 of the championship rounds as being the champion? Well, only time will tell, because it's the final corners now of the 22nd lap of the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. And for the second time in the day, it's bringing the checkered flag for Bernd Schneider. A double win, ein Doppelsieg for Schneider and Mercedes-Benz.
Schneider, a driver really that should still be in Formula One. He's a brilliant driver and had two unlucky years with the Zakspeed Formula One team. Ludwig here, another great driver, over 50 and still able to do it, coming home a very good second.
And what about that young man in third place, just 24 years of age, Marcel Fessler. And Pedro Lamy in fourth position, followed across the line by Manuel Reuter, the first of the Opels home in fifth. But there, Bernd Schneider, the man who, when he raced in GT cars, shared a car with Michael Schumacher, and it was Schneider that was the faster of the two drivers. Well, the Nürburgring, as ever, bringing drama, excitement, and some brilliant racing, and a double win for Bernd Schneider. Klaus Ludwig, 2 second places. Marcel Fessler will be happy with that third place in round 10, with Pedro Lamy fourth, Manuel Reuter, the fastest of the Opel drivers, in fifth, and Marcel Thiemann in sixth. But it's Schneider taking the trophies at the Nürburgring. But it's young Marcel Fessler who starts off the party. 3 great drivers, Klaus Ludwig, Bernd Schneider and Marcel Fessler, worthy top 3 on the podium. But for Bernd Schneider, the serious business of the championship has to go on. And Bernd currently has a 42-point lead over Klaus Ludwig. Manuel Reuter now slips in the points, scoring ahead of Marcel Fessler, with Joe Winkelhock 5th and Peter Dambrecht still 6th.
Well, that's it from a very damp Nürburgring and the DTM. But join us next week when the Toka boys are back in town. See you then.